Okay, I dare not even say it out loud, but I think I got it working. I think. Let's see. Things look correct. Kind of wish this would move. Don't really need the ferry gauge to be so large. Look at that person doing squats in the back. Alright. Check my streams real quick. Alright. Looks good. Sound go. Alright, let's watch some comics while I figure shit out.
Join their group. Join their cause. Steve, he sends his wife a message saying, Rosa, it's me. I'm sorry this is a message and not in person. I just need you to know I'm okay. I'm more than okay, really. I won't be home for a while because there's something I need to do. I'm opening my eyes and hopefully the eyes of others, but I can't do it alone. Rosa, I'm going to assemble the Avengers. Avengers Twilight Issue 2. That's not who we are. Steve, now all jacked up on super soldier serum, does a few good deeds in the streets, helping citizens fight their oppressors. The news starts picking up some of the story of Cap's return. In the underground bunker of the Defenders, they are discussing their plans. They want to try and win over the minds of the people. The problem is the government has complete control over what everyone sees. So they want to try and hijack a live event. All the big sporting events are far too secure in their arenas and parks.
Some PUBG stuff,
so
or
instead, the Defenders are going to try and
buy a new
hijack
game?
the New Year's Eve broadcast.
How did you blow your wad?
All the news stations will be on site, so they can hack into the broadcast, show some of the secret footage they have that shows some of the atrocities going on, and
so many
Cap can say a few words. Luke Cage states, there's an illusion of freedom, and we need to shatter it. This is not just about here at home. America's been committing atrocities across the globe, using their new Avengers. Once their Defenders meeting wraps up, Steve's wife, Rosa, has been brought in. Rosa slaps her husband in the face. She's angry that Steve made this big public decision to become Captain America again, and now her life is all blown up. She can't go home and she can't go back to work. Rosa, she's pissed, but she says, well, if I'm stuck here, I'm gonna at least make myself useful. I'm pretty sure you'll all need medical attention at some point. But you and me, Steve, we're through. Go fight your war. It's all you know how to do. Over in Washington, at the White House, James Stark and Kyle Jarvis are having a meeting with the president. They're discussing the latest events with Captain America. James comments, yeah, looks like he got recruited by those underground losers. Kyle replies to James, I would not classify the Defenders as losers. Resistance grows unless you crush it. The president asks, so should we call the Avengers in then? Kyle answers, the last thing we need is some accidental footage of our Captain America punching a geriatric soldier. No, I think we'll send in the Thunderbolts. The president starts sweating. He asks, on American soil? James questions, why not? They're Americans. The president is opposed to this. He says, we can't. I won't let a war start within the borders of my country, Mr. Jarvis. Kyle tells the president, who do you think you are? The president says, I'm the president, and frankly, you're just some CEO. Kyle to this replies, I'm the CEO. Kyle then grabs the president's tie and tells him, of America, and you're just the mascot. Kyle then pushes the president back in his chair. He tells him, and here's the secret to the Secret Service. They work for us, and you know damn well you work for us too. It's our money that puts you in this seat. We'll take care of Steve Rogers for you. You're welcome. Over at a military base, one of the Marines there, a man named McGinty, he heads up the Thunderbolts. He is told that their sources believe there's going to be some sort of terrorist attack on New Year's perpetrated by the original Captain America, and they are going to intercept. McGinty radios in to some of his team members. One of them is a woman named Ramona. She is the new Bullseye. She discusses with one of her colleagues that their mission is going to be to take down Steve Rogers. Ramona's friend, a little surprised, comments, "For real? That guy's like a legend. My dad served because of him. I'm not sure how I feel about this." But Ramona, aka Bullseye, she says, "Doesn't matter how you feel. We don't protect Captain America, we protect America. History is full of heroes going bad. Our job is to find them and neutralize them." Elsewhere, over at the home of Miss Marvel, aka Kamala Khan. Kamala is now a middle-aged woman, and she just sent her kids off to school. When Kamala is relaxing in her home, all of a sudden she gets visited by Steve Rogers. Steve tells Kamala, "I need your help." Kamala is shocked. Steve tells her, "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. There are so few of us left, and you were one of the best." Kamala is upset. She tells Steve, "We lost everything on H Day. I can't believe you would even come here. I have a family. You can't do this. You can't ask this of me." Steve responds, "I'm truly sorry, I am. Right now, it's just me and Luke and some kids, older than yours, but still just kids, calling themselves Defenders, fighting for a world where they don't have to be scared anymore. We need you to fight so your children won't have to." Kamala tells Steve to get out. Steve keeps going. He says, "These kids, these Defenders, they've opened my eyes to what's really going on out there. But they also told me stories of people helping each other against this system of tyrants. People housing others, protecting them. There's even been some reports of people being saved by a giant hand, like the hand of God. Can you believe it? The Dark Avengers protocols are in effect if you need to get in touch. Goodbye, Kamala." Once Steve leaves, Kamala Khan goes down to her basement, and she turns on a special radio. Later on, it is now New Year's Eve in Times Square. The Defenders are trying to do their mission. They hack into the broadcast going on. A police officer almost spots them, but the Defenders take him down. But then, a whole bunch of Thunderbolt troops show up. One of the Defenders says, "Damn it, we've got company. And they're not just cops, they're Thunderbolt troops. They knew we were coming." Steve Rogers helps fight some of these troops off. Steve is given some sort of hard drive with some footage that the Defenders wanted to broadcast. One of the Thunderbolt troops tries to shoot at Steve. Steve dodges out of the way. The civilian gets hit in the shoulder and goes down. Steve gets really angry by this and he punches that trooper in the face. The new Bullseye is up at a high vantage point.
Money isn't
She's
everything, I
aiming
suppose.
down. She shoots a hole right through
It
the
sure
hard
does
drive
make
that
things
Captain
easier.
America was holding. The Defenders will not be able to play the broadcast footage they wanted, but they can still take over the feed, and Captain America can still talk. The Defenders have finally managed to hack into the feed, and they switch it over to live. Bullseye was going to continue shooting, but her commanding officer now told them to all stand down. The situation is going out live to the world now, and they just shot a civilian, so no more shooting now. Steve Rogers, now live on all the cameras there, takes off his mask and says to the world, "My name is Steve Rogers. You know who I am. You know what I stand for. Your government has stolen away your freedom. The Watcher Act isn't there to protect you. It isn't there to protect your privacy. It's there to protect them. To make it so you never see what they're doing to the world, to the disenfranchised. It's so light never shines on their crimes, so you never see the helpless people who suffer in order for you to thrive. That's not who we are. We're Americans. We look out for people. We don't turn our backs. And now that you know, you can begin to be free again. Together we can fight back. We can help people. Eventually, one of the defenders grabs Steve and tells him it's time to go. Network headquarters managed to root out the hacker's code, and they no longer will be on the air.
Alright,
Steve and one
that's
of the
looking
defenders
better.
take off on a motorcycle. Bullseye is told to take the shot, but she just seems to hesitate and hold back. We jump over to James Stark, working on some Iron Man tech. James is using his dad's brain to crack a couple of issues that he was having with the new armor. James, talking to Kyle, says soon he'll have enough for the whole army. Kyle tells James, "Excellent news, son, but I don't want these suits for the army. I want them for you." James replies, "Wait, what? We've been over this, Jarvis. I'm not my dad. I don't want to wear these frickin' murder machines." Kyle to this says, "I know, James, but things have changed. Steve Rogers is a dog with a bone, and the only thing that will cause him to misstep is knowing his friend's son is inside that machine. Iron Man is your destiny, James. Your parents didn't sire a fool, and I didn't raise a coward." Elsewhere, we see Kyle is somewhere else. He finishes his phone call with James, and then he starts talking to a electronic voice in a machine. The voice in the machine is actually the captive consciousness of Ultron. Ultron tells Kyle, "You're losing control." Kyle responds, "Hardly. There are bumps along the way, but if there's one thing I've learned from you, it's patience. You didn't have enough of it on each day, and so you lost." We then see images of supposedly this Kyle in some sort of hazmat outfit on H-Day. And Kyle, he removed his hazmat mask, revealing that Kyle is actually the Red Skull in disguise. So Red Skull is secretly this Kyle guy, and he has been secretly working with Ultron's captive consciousness to covertly seize control of the world. In the current day, once again, Kyle / the Red Skull continues talking to Ultron. He asks, "How does a robot not have patience?" Ultron answers, "I am forever Skull, but every second is an infinity. You're losing control, and I need you alive in order to fulfill your end of the deal, to free me from your crude prison." Kyle answers, "Having your head on ice has been a greater boon than even Stark's.
Oh, cool.
And a deal is a deal, robot. Once I've set this world into shape and I'm ready to depart it, let the robots have their way with it for a millennia. Let Ultron bring Earth into its next era of greatness." Back over in the Defender's secret underground base, one of the tech guys there, Tyler, has been monitoring the reaction to Steve's speech, and the chatter is not really that positive. If anything, people seem more against them now. Luke Cage goes to talk with Steve. Steve is bummed. He tells Luke, "I'm a fool. I thought I could just tell people what was happening and they'd believe me, join the fight. I thought that their freedoms meant something to them.
Oh, they got some
I
cool
thought
stuff
that the
now.
flag I wear meant something to people." Luke Cage smacks Steve in the back of his head. He tells him, "Shut up. We don't have time for your sad American dream speech. We don't do this shit to be liked. We do it because it's right. Bad people are doing bad things, so we stop them. Yeah, it would be easier if the world was with us, but we'll do it on our own if we have to, like always." One of the younger defenders, Carrie, walks into the room. She tells Steve and Luke, "It took my guys months, but we finally got the inside scoop on their secret weapon. We'll need help, though. So let's get it from the world's smartest man, Tony Stark." Avengers Twilight Issue 3. With
Look
you,
like Michael
I
Jackson.
can do anything. The Thunderbolts are having their debriefing. Bullseye is scolded. The commanding officer asks, "You didn't take the shot. Care to explain that to me, Marine?" Bullseye answers, "He wasn't armed. I don't shoot unarmed civilians, sir." Bullseye's commanding officer responds, "You shoot exactly who I tell you to shoot. That man is a weapon, the most dangerous military asset ever created, and his head is full of frickin' delusions and cotton candy dreams of what he thinks the world should be, what the flag he wears should represent. And that, Marine, makes him dangerous. Back at the Defenders headquarters, Steve Rogers has trouble sleeping. He thinks of his past as an Avenger. Steve, he decides he's going to try and rescue Tony Stark's head from the raft. Steve is talking to one of the young Defenders, their tech guy, Tyler. Tyler knows that Steve is going to try to infiltrate the raft by himself. Steve argues that Luke can barely move and the rest of them aren't ready. The raft is too dangerous. Tyler asks Steve, "You think you can just sneak in there by yourself? Be the hero? How are you gonna do that without a guy who can override all their security?" Steve, he thinks on that. Maybe he does need Tyler's help a bit. Over at the raft, we see James Stark talking to his father's head in a tube. James tells his dad, "I did it. I made an armor. Not a drone, not some soldier's uniform. An armor. For me. And the kicker is, I didn't even have to use your brain to do it. I'm as good as you, Dad. As smart. Smarter even. Because you and Mom just flew around punching baddies. Like you were both in some sort of adventure novel. But me? I'm actually saving the world, Dad. And keeping it safe." Later on, we see Steve Rogers and Tyler. They are in one of the Avengers' old Quinjets. Cap is flying them both over to the Supermax prison known as the Raft. As they arrive, Steve tells Tyler to wait in the Quinjet. If he's not back in 20 minutes, return to base. Tyler says he should go in. He can help him. Steve tells him, "You've done great, Tyler, but this part is too dangerous, and your Defenders need you alive." So Steve, he then infiltrates the Raft base. He is trying to avoid all the high-tech security cameras.
That's tough.
Steve, he then narrates to us the history
What kind
of the
of
Raft.
job you looking for these
The Raft
days?
was a place the heroes would keep their villains. But now, in a world without heroes where the government executes its villains,
Sucks too,
it
because
is
like
a monstrous research
the
facility.
rate at things that get
Every
more
part of Steve
expensive
wants
and
to
the
just
rate at
burst
people are
in there
paying,
and shut down
it's
these
just not,
experiments.
it's not balanced
But
at all.
war makes people make hard decisions. Steve, for now, has to stick to the mission of rescuing Tony. Steve finds a scientist there, and he knocks him out and takes his outfit and security card. Steve, he then swipes his way, and he eventually enters the room where Tony Stark is. As Steve approaches Tony, Steve says, "My God, it's me, Steve. I'm gonna get you out of here, friend. Somehow." Just as Steve is wondering how he's gonna move Tony, a voice coming from a duct above him tells him, "Old man, don't bother moving this time. My scope is on you." The person aiming at Steve is the new Bullseye we met earlier. Steve responds, "The soldier who didn't shoot me? Your CO must have been furious. Mine used to be as well. What's your name, Marine?" Ramona answers, "To you, it's Bullseye. I figured you'd come for your pal. You seem like the kind of guy who makes big, bad decisions." Steve answers, "Saving a friend is never a bad decision." Bullseye and Steve talk some more, but they get interrupted by James Stark. James walks into the room and
I don't have
says,
ears.
"I came to have a tech chat with
can't
the old
wear
man,
earrings."
not an old man."
Oh wait,
Steve
now you can
tells
kind of
James,
see
"James,
it.
I'm
Maybe,
taking your
no.
father. This
No.
isn't right, son, and you know it." James to this says, "No, what isn't right is you taking your geriatric steroids and beating up cops. All because what? The world isn't how Grandpa remembers it?" Steve argues back, "Throwing people in prison, never to be heard from again, just because they dared question the government? That's right to you?" James, he counters saying, "Oh please, the
What
country
kind of
is fed,
fucking outfit is
entertained,
this?
happy. Some whiners want to screw that up for everyone? Screw them. Throw them in a pit for all I care. You messed up, old man. I'm gonna call in the Avengers to take you down." Just as James says that, Bullseye shoots James in the shoulder with an arrow. Bullseye then climbs down out of that vent, revealing herself to actually be more like Hawkeye now, the hero. Steve asks her, "Why help me?" Bullseye, or shall I refer to her as Hawkeye now? She answers, just,
that's so goofy.
let's go. So it seems this new Bullseye is turning good. Steve grabs the head of Tony Stark. James Stark on the ground calls in security. So now Steve and this new Hawkeye need
It's
to
funny they even
break
give
their
you
way
pants
out
for
of
this
here.
one.
Hawkeye tells Steve, "I've memorized the layout of this place. Follow me and I'll get us out." As they are leaving this
boy.
room, Steve
Yep.
comments, "You call yourself Bullseye? But, I know a Hawkeye when I see one. If you're with me, I've got one
They really
rule.
leaned into the
No
furry
killing."
angle of this, didn't
Hawkeye
they?
answers, "Whatever, old man." So the two of them start fighting their way out of this base. Hawkeye is shooting people, but in a non-lethal kind of way. As they are running out of this facility, something catches Steve's eye. He sees in the room they have his old shield on display. They were doing some sort of experiments on it, it seemed. Well, Steve needs that thing. He breaks into the room and grabs the shield. Steve and the new Hawkeye continue making their way through the base. Steve's making some use out of that shield, deflecting bullets and knocking people in the head with it. Eventually, they make their way outside. James Stark, now in his new Iron Man suit, is flying in the sky above them. He warns them, "You're definitely coming in, dead or alive." All of a sudden, Tyler in the Quinjet fires on James Stark in the Iron Man suit. James, he turns around and fires back at the Quinjet. The Quinjet takes some damage. It is going to crash land on the raft. As the Quinjet is coming down, Steve, he jumps.
Cool.
He lands on the Quinjet. He uses his shield to break down the glass. And then he grabs Tyler and helps him escape, jumping with Tyler in the nick of time while the Quinjet explodes behind them. James Stark, a little impressed, comments, "Wow, not half bad, Uncle Steve. Not half bad at all." James, he then flies up high in the air, and then he comes down full force, and he breaks off part of the raft ship. It starts sinking into the lake there. Steve then goes to fight James. We see he
So
is wearing
weird.
Tony Stark's head as a backpack behind him.
Fucking
James and
horse
Steve trade a few
samurai.
blows. James, this being one of his first times actually
Good.
using the suit
That's good
himself,
stuff.
comments, "Man, being Iron Man is God. I feel high." As Steve and James continue fighting, Steve notices some of the people around them drowning. Steve asks, "James, please, people are dying." James responds, "People die, at least most of them do." James then manages to grab the Tony Stark head away from Steve. James, he then looks at the head of his dad. And then he says, "You know what? I don't even need him anymore. Or I don't need anyone." And he tosses Tony's head in the sky. Steve, he continues trying to fight James. And while the two of them are engaged in combat, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, arrives on the scene. She is massive, and she picks up some of the innocent civilians that were around, and she saves them. James, he hits Cap a few times. He tells him, "None of you are leaving here. Steve fights back though, saying, "It's over, son. No one dies today." This pisses James off. He responds, "Stop it. Stop calling me son. I'm not your child. I'm James Stark, and I run the world." Steve to this says, "I've met men like you. You won't run it for long. The power resides in the people." James, he then starts powering up the glove in his suit. He is going to shoot a massive blast
Yeah, just
to
a
kill
bit.
Steve. James
Just a bit.
says to Cap, "Goodbye, Uncle Steve. Your dreams are a little too dangerous." Before James can get that blast off, though, all of a sudden he gets struck with a lightning bolt from the sky. James' systems malfunction. He asks, "What did you do?" Steve answers, "What I always do in hard times. I prayed." And we see the source of that lightning bolt was Thor. Thor finally arrived. He tells Steve, "It's been a wolf's age, Captain. Shall we assemble?" Avengers Twilight, Issue 4, The Firefighters. James Stark, damaged from Thor's lightning, gets beat on by Cap for a bit, and eventually he is forced to retreat to fight another day. Once James is gone, Steve, Thor, the rest of the Defenders, as well as Miss Marvel, assist all of these civilians in the raft and help get them to safety. Not only do they help some of these civilians on the raft get to safety, they bring some of the injured people back to the Defenders' headquarters for medical attention. Steve's wife, Rosa, is busy at work trying to save people. Steve tells her, "I know you're mad. I should have talked to you beforehand, but I'm hoping we can still have a conversation when this is all over. I love you." Once Steve leaves, one of the Defenders named Amy is a little dumbfounded by Steve bringing all these people here. Amy asks Steve's wife, "This is crazy. We need these supplies, and Cap, he's just letting the enemy into our hideout. These guards here on the raft were protecting the scientists who were doing inhumane experiments. There are actual supervillains in my room." Rosa explains, he believes every life is worth saving, that everyone can lose their way, but can be brought back into the light. Sometimes it's frustrating, but when you hear him say it, when you see him act on it, well, it can really make you believe for a moment in heroes. In another room in the Defenders' headquarters, we see they are having a team meeting. There's Hawkeye, Luke Cage, Steve Rogers, Thor, Tyler, Miss Marvel, as well as the recently reacquired Tony Stark's head. Thor, he tries to apologize for being away so long. He explains, "The burden of immortality is that there's a point where I can no longer face those I care for as time catches up to them. I've seen too many loved ones wither away while I have no choice but to watch them suffer." Luke Cage tells Thor, yeah, we get it. You're a graceful ager." Thor, he explains further, saying, "I am ashamed, Luke Cage, that I did not have the courage to face an enemy that will always win. Time. After the devastation of H-Day, so many lost. I couldn't bear." Steve cuts Thor off and tells him, "You came when we needed you. That's what counts." Tyler, he is investigating Tony Stark's head. He thinks Tony's head needs a jolt of electricity to wake up his conscience, but their generators are knocked out. Thor, he obliges and taps his hammer on Tony's head's apparatus, and it jolts it with electricity, and Tony finally wakes up. Tony explains to the group, "I saw everything. Decades of my boy, my son, spiraling in front of my eyes, and I couldn't just do anything." Steve tells Tony, "It's not your fault.
Do you
America's been
regularly
twisted.
abuse
They used you."
your employees?
Tony replies, "Steve, it's even worse. It's the Red Skull, Steve. He's pretending to be Jarvis's brother, the CEO of my company, and he's got my boy. And he's going to seize the military, reveal himself, and rule as the Red Skull." Hawkeye, she puts in her 2 cents. She says, "I've been on a lot of missions all around the world, fighting in countries ruled by dictators. They all had the same thing in common. They wanted the world to know they did this. They were all men with irrational egos that needed history books to underline their name in red, no matter what." Thor, listening to this, says, "Ha! This is our new Hawkeye. I sense a great warrior spirit in her." Luke Cage ends their meeting by saying, "Okay, so the Red Skull is running the country, has access to its full military force and Tony's technology, and the public is probably going to be fine with it all and attack us for fighting back. Well, damn. Avengers assemble." Over at Stark Tower, James Stark is working on his Iron Man suit. Kyle Jarvis, secretly the Red Skull, goes to talk with him. Kyle tells James, "They made you look like a fool." James says he's not in the mood. Kyle continues, "They made you look like a fool, and they're going to take our country away from us, James. Your father and his friends who always kept America in a perpetual state of chaos. All I've ever wanted was prosperity and peace for all, and I've been vilified for it. Chased through the decades, hiding in the shadows, making things better. James gets a little confused. He asks, Kyle, what are you talking about? Kyle then answers, I wanted to tell you, son, I've been living a lie. My name is Johann Schmidt. I was once the terror of Hitler, the undeserved boogeyman of this country that I've grown to love so much. I was known as the Red Skull, and I will be again. We've done this, boy. We've saved this country. I needed you to know the truth before they come for us, before they try to twist your mind against me. Tony Stark isn't your father, I am. And we're in this together, son. Back at the Defenders HQ, Steve is training, tossing his shield around. Tony, now in some sort of robot body, goes to talk with Steve. Tony says, Steve, my mind feels out of step. I can't remember much. Did Jan survive? Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, was Tony's wife, and she apparently went missing on H-Day. Steve answers Tony, I'm sorry, Tony, we assumed that she died with you with the rest. When did you last see her? Tony answers, I don't remember. What everyone's calling H-Day is just a jumble in my head. I remember we stopped the Hulk, stopped Ultron, but lost so much. There were still Ultron-enhanced villains on a rampage, heroes falling. I knew what was coming next. Only a fool couldn't have read the build-up over the years. America had enough. I watched as they sent everything at what remained of Boston. Not just at the villains, but at us. People were taking back their lives, their security, and they mistook the firefighters for the fire. Jan and I managed to escape Boston, but we couldn't leave without James. I remember I had a plan of some sort, but I don't remember what it was. And then I just had pain. I don't know how they saw me coming, but they did. I don't remember what happened to Jan. I wish I could, but maybe it was terrible. Maybe I'm blocking it out. Maybe she's also a frozen head somewhere staring at her son as he careens toward fascism. Steve tells Tony, I'm sorry, Tony. If she's alive, we'll find her. The two of them then discuss what their next move should be, and they feel they should take out these new Avengers that are out there in the world. They are potentially the biggest obstacle in their way. Later on, Thor, Hawkeye, Tony Stark Iron Man, Miss Marvel, and Steve Rogers arrive at Avengers Mansion. Once in the mansion, they look at a painting of the supposed new Avengers. It appears that the new Avengers have their own version of Iron Man, Captain America, Captain Marvel, and Thor. Steve Rogers and the others continue making their way sneakily through Avengers Mansion. Eventually, they find themselves in a high-tech computer room. They investigate, and eventually, they find out that these new Avengers aren't even real. They are just holograms, graphic programs, nothing but made-up propaganda. Steve, realizing what is happening, says, none of it is real. The Avengers don't exist. That is when Kyle Jarvis, aka the Red Skull, shows up on a computer monitor in the room.
Man, I still have so many more fish to go.
They exist to the world that they keep in line. Steve yells back, Skull, you maniac! You should have prayed for them to be real. They're the only thing that stood in the way of us stopping you. Red Skull, he answers, Oh, mein Captain. What they represent is what will stop you. I've defeated you by giving your precious Americans everything they've ever wanted. Prosperity through ignorance. Blind eyes to the suffering of others. To America's global militaristic treachery. They believe what I tell them to believe because their cups are full.
There it is.
It will be resplendent to be able to finally tell them a singular truth. The Avengers of yesteryear are dead. Some doors then shut in the room that Steve and the others are in. They are trapped inside. Well, almost. Thor, he yells, You cannot trap thunder! He swings his hammer and then shoots the hammer outwards and busts through the wall. Tony Stark Iron Man hacks into the Red Skull's computers there in this Avengers mansion, and by doing so, he learns that the Red Skull has already done what he was planning to do. He has the US military, and he's going to burn down Washington. At that very moment, some armed men storm into the White House, and they point their guns at the president and take him prisoner. Elsewhere, back at Stark Tower, Red Skull and James Stark are working on various things. Red Skull is remotely supervising the kidnapping of the president. He has also ordered the military to start storming the various defenders' safe houses. James Stark asks how Red Skull is able to pull all of this off. Skull answers, "I control the news, but more than that, I control the news individual people see." Comforting news fills American households, but for those with a badge, with sanctioned guns and military might, they see an America where their president is a traitor, where government is an anti-democratic nightmare. You and I have been running America unofficially for almost a decade now, son. We've fed the sheep so well, their happy sheep lives are because of us. So now, let us make it official. Let us take America. You see, Red Skull now has his own kind of Iron Man type suit. And Ultron's consciousness is there in the background too.
I was reading on Reddit the other day, the Kick subreddit. There was this younger guy who was posting, and he was like, "Is it weird that I seem to get, a lot of tips from, dudes that are paying me money to take pictures of myself?" And it was just like, I don't know. May as well just start an OnlyFans at that point. Why even go through Cake? Oh, there's some creeps on here.
Avengers Twilight, Issue 5. And the Truth is Reign.
I don't know what I'm gonna do if this keeps going
James
like
Stark
this.
asks,
It's not even giving me an error
Kyle,
anymore.
I don't understand what... Red Skull then responds, "I told you, James. My name is Johan. Now, scan quickly, son. I need to be sure." James scans the Red Skull's Iron Man suit, which he had built courtesy of Ultron. James, he comments, "There's nothing I can see. No hidden malware, no
I guess that's
AI programs.
it.
This armor,
What
it's
the fuck am I supposed to do with that?
Red Skull explains it's a gift from Ultron, but he isn't above impregnating
Son of a
its
bitch.
gifts with Trojans. Go suit up now, boy. Today we save America. So now everyone has an Iron Man suit. Tony Stark's head has an Iron Man suit, James Stark has an Iron Man suit, and Red Skull does too. Once James scurries off, Ultron and Red Skull talk. Ultron's consciousness, trapped in this computer, asks, "You never intended to honor our deal." Red Skull answers, "I did not. Machines serve man, Ultron. I will not allow you to reign when I die. People see me as a monster, but all I want is a better world." Ultron, bashing Red Skull, answers, "You are human ego on a scale that defies measurement, Skull. All you want is power, for humans to bend the knee to recognize you. You will never be satisfied. Your sad human life will forever be in pursuit of a thing denied to you from birth, from your flawed mother and your disgraceful father." Red Skull, not wanting to listen to Ultron's shit anymore, blasts the computer that was housing Ultron, destroying it. Red Skull then tells Ultron, "Machines serve man, Ultron, and men serve the Red Skull." As Steve Rogers and the rest of the Defenders are flying in their Quinjet, Steve tells them all about the state of what's going on. He
You'll get
states,
there.
"The Red Skull is taking
Just
control
work on that
of the military
six-pack.
and law enforcement. He's
Start eating at the
targeting its
Golden
members
Corral.
specifically,
You
feeding
know,
them lies and propaganda, computer-generated news
find someone
reporters
that's like
and
on the cusp of
vendors,
death,
making them
and you
believe
hook up
that
with
they're
them.
saving the country from a rogue
I don't know what I
president
did, but I guess
when
it
they're
worked.
actually
Whatever.
securing it for the Skull." Right now, there is a coup happening in the Pentagon. Over in the White House, we see some Secret Service are on their knees as soldiers are pointing guns
Isn't
at
there
them.
a
The
mailbox or
president in the
something?
Oval is also on his knees. He's warning the people there. You can't, you won't get away with this. The Avengers will stop you. But then, all of a sudden, Red Skull in his Iron Man suit waltzes into the Oval Office and tells the president, "Mr. President, I have some terrible news for you. I have no time to convince foot soldiers of my standing here. Your Avengers aren't real. I created them. Fantasies to keep the people feeling safe at night. After all, isn't that what anyone truly wants?"
They're actually playing music. That's funny.
President Cowering says,
Good for them.
This isn't right. The Avengers are
Alright, calm down, Final Fantasy.
coming. They have to. Skull answers, "Let reality set in, Mr. President. The next step will go easier if you make peace." Red Skull, he senses that Tony Stark Iron Man is about to enter the premises. So, Skull shoots and obliterates the president, killing him. And just as he fires that death blow, Iron Man
Maybe the
bursts
porter?
into the Oval. The Skull then tells some of the soldiers in the room, "Welcome, gentlemen. This Iron Man here has denied our traitorous president a fair trial, it
Oh,
seems."
why?
Tony Stark grabs Skull and
Why?
flies the both of them through the roof
At
of the
least
White House
give me
and
an
into the
error.
sky.
I can work
They
with
are then fighting
errors.
and
I
soaring
can't.
through the air, and they smash through the side of an office building. While they continue tussling, James Stark in his own Iron Man suit takes off, and he has an army of other Iron Men behind him. Elsewhere, throughout various parts of Washington, the real Avengers are fighting off some of the Red Skull's troops he has manipulated to his side of the conflict. We see Thor, Steve Rogers, and Miss Marvel in action, taking down various troops. Red Skull, squaring off with Tony through a radio, tells his men some orders. Red Skull says, "Begin the raid on the Defenders' safe houses. Kill order intact. Death to all terrorists. And while you're at it, fire the first wave of missiles. This city needs to be raised so we can grow
Yeah,
a
but you have
new
to have a
democracy."
good like gimmick for
Tony Stark
GoFundMe.
calls the
Like,
Red Skull a madman.
hi, I was born
Tony
with
then takes off. He's going to try and
only
stop as
two
many missiles as he
fingers,
can.
one on each hand.
As
you
Tony is
know?
flying, he tells the others that the Skull is on the loose.
Please help
and
me
the
buy money
president's
for
dead. Hawkeye
8
believes
more.
that they'll hit the vice president next. The Secret Service will be moving her
Yeah,
now.
you need to have a
Red
gimmick
Skull,
for your
he then starts
GoFundMe.
flying through Washington.
So you could say like,
He
I was
flies
only
over to
born
where
with 2
Thor
fingers.
is, and he
Help me
mocks
buy
Thor,
8 more
saying,
fingers.
"Tell me, God,
And then he put
have
like
you ever fought a country?"
$20,000
Skull then turns
for
to Steve and
finger
says,
reasons.
"You fought a country before, haven't you, Herr Captain?"
Or you
My
say
beloved
like, I want to
Germany.
crowdfund.
You were a leader of men then, but now
I want to
you
crowdfund
lead
a game that
children
works.
huddled away in their ramshackle buildings across America.
And you need $500,000.
Buildings I'm currently tearing apart. Children I'm currently murdering. While Red Skull is gloating, some of his men report back in that all of the Defenders' safe houses are
Maybe
empty.
you want to set up a
They've been
business
cleared out.
where you sell
Skull is not happy to hear this.
OnlyFans
Elsewhere, up in
bathwater.
the sky,
You know?
Tony Stark, Iron
And you
Man,
need
is
some
trying
capital
to
money.
destroy
You could
all
set
of
up a
the missiles
GoFundMe
in
for
the air.
that.
He tries to remotely talk to his allies, saying, "I need Thor, Cap," but none of them can hear him as James Stark in his own Iron Man suit is blocking Tony's signal. Tony in the sky, talking to his son, says, "James, son, I dreamed of this moment every
Guess
minute."
I'll
in that
try putting
tank.
it on the lowest
You've
graphics.
gotta
That's
stop
about the only
this."
thing I can think to
James
do right
replies,
now.
"You're a liar." Tony, he continues, "Stop this madness. Please, I'm begging you." James answers, "You want this stopped? Then stay dead this time." Tony yells back, "He's the Red Skull. He's going to kill millions." James, believing in the Red Skull, the man that raised him most of his life, argues back, "No, he's going to save billions." This isn't about being a superhero, about putting on a show of good versus evil. You only ever cared about how the world sees you. The selfless hero for the camera, letting his wife die, letting his son become an orphan. Tony yells back, "You think I wanted this? I love you, and I loved your mother. I know you think what you're doing is right here, but people's lives are all that matter.
That's
Your mother,
true.
me, my friends, we only ever
And if
tried
you
to
say you're in
save
one of those
people, to
weird
protect them,
states like
give
Florida,
them the
you could probably
freedom
get
to
some
live their
extra sympathy.
lives. The Red Skull
Be like,
only cares
I
about
was born
power,
a man,
about
and
controlling
the way
people.
that Florida
I
is
know you
now,
hate
they don't
me.
want me
I
to
do,
have a
but
dick.
this isn't about us.
But with
I
your
wasn't there
help and
for you. I'd give anything to change
$30,000,
things, but
I could
here
have a
now.
dick.
I'm here to tell you that this is wrong. You can't control people. James yells for his dad to shut up, shut up. Tony, he then remotely hacks into all of the Iron Men robots that James had flying behind him. Tony tells his son, I'm flattered, son. You didn't change my designs
Oh
too
good,
much.
this is back. Why
I don't
not?
control people, but I'm damn good at controlling machines. So Tony manages to take them all over. Meanwhile,
I
down
don't
on
understand.
the ground,
I was
Miss Marvel and Hawkeye have
going along
found the
just
Vice
fine
President
in
and
life.
moved her to safety. Meanwhile, Thor and Steve Rogers are fighting Red Skull.
Oh,
Red
this
Skull
shit.
is gloating, saying, I'm not one of your Stark derivatives, you simpletons. I am the soul of Red Skull. I am the power of Ultron.
Stark derivative.
Steve Rogers, wiping some blood from his lip, replies, Ultron, good to know. We routinely beat him too. Back up in the sky, Tony Stark had took control of all of those Iron Men drones of James Stark, and he sent them all to intercept the missiles, to fly right into them
Useless.
and make them explode. James asks his dad, what have you done? Tony answered, sent your drones on submissions, your boss's missiles. They've gone bye-bye. James, he then grabs his dad and chucks him at the Washington Monument. Tony Stark, Iron Man, goes right in one side of the monument and comes out the other, and then he crashes down on the ground. James then flies over to his dad. He tells him, you couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? We could have done this with minimal casualties. But now, Red Skull is about to throw everything at Washington and drop a nuclear payload. Why did you have to ruin everything? James says this as he punches his dad. Tony, with his radio now working again, manages to tell Steve and the others that they're dropping a nuke. Thor, hearing this, flies into the sky, saying, the coward's weapon will not land today. Luke Cage, who is sitting in a surveillance vehicle, is tired of waiting on the sidelines. Sure, he walks slow as shit now, but he is bulletproof and he hates fascists.
I
Luke
can't believe I've spent
leaves the
most of the
surveillance
day
van
just
and
trying to
starts
get any
walking towards
goddamn
Red
game to
Skull
work
and the
today.
others. Steve Rogers and the Red Skull are still trading blows with one another. Red Skull tells Steve, this isn't like before, Rogers. This isn't some impetus plan. This is decades in the making. Steve quips back, I don't care if you plan this for a millennium. I'll still stop you again and again. You can manipulate people into believing that H-Day was necessary, that Hero Day was some inevitable judgment on my friends, but we'll still keep fighting because that's what we do. Red Skull to this laughs. He says, oh, Captain, you and your H-Day. Since that glorious battle, America has been safer than ever. And did you ever wonder why? Was it because you heroes actually stood in the way of peace? Or was it because America finally had
Son of a
the
bitch.
ultimate weapon that they could drop into upstart countries at will? Typical American narcissists. It was never called H-Day because of you heroes. It was H-Day because of the Hulk. As Red Skull says this, the nuclear bomb that was mentioned earlier smashes somewhere into the ground. It explodes and it wakes up the Hulk.